girl be more like Alexa Bliss.
It's Friday. It's pre-recorded. Now the show Dozens Love the 9 Years Podcast.
Welcome to the 9 Years Podcast. Nick Draper here with the face of the BBC Sport website, Mr. Stuart Deakins, and thank you very much for downloading the show this week, whether you have done so on iTunes or YouTube or Spotify 9yrspodcast.org. We have things to talk about this week, which is useful because we're an audio podcast as opposed to one of those visual podcasts you get. So we do need things to talk about. We've got 2 games of football to discuss. We have an incredible amount of money raised through the bond, the Power Lane bond, to discuss. And we've got a couple of games to look forward to as well. We've got to catch up on our music quiz and Paul Oss Who. But first of all, Stu, I would like to discuss Anthony Hartigan.
Yeah, this has been an interesting, well, I don't know what development or situation arising from the end of the Ipswich game. I know it was a boring game, but we've now got a topic to discuss. It's yeah, I wasn't at the game, so I didn't get it. I've heard what supposedly happened, but you were at the game, weren't you? And you sort of noticed it. Is that right?
Yeah, let's explain what happened. So at the end of the game, at full time, Anthony Hartigan got into a little bit of a discussion/debate with a fan in the corner of the Tempest end and the John Smith stand. And from what we're led to believe, words were exchanged and Anthony was led away by, in the end, a combination of Ashley Bayes and Mark Robinson, reportedly with tears in his eyes. Do you know what? I was looking for songs to start this podcast this week, and one of the songs that came up on Spotify as I was listening through randomly was Boys Don't Cry. And I poo-pooed it. I now realise, thank God I poo-pooed it, because otherwise that would have been taken completely the wrong way if I'd chosen it. Anyway, that's aside. That's reportedly, I don't think we've had that confirmed that he was actually in tears or anything like that. And when you've got tears in your eyes, there could be many emotions that you're feeling that lead to that. So I don't know what's happened there. I was sort of aware of it. I didn't realise exactly what had happened until afterwards, as I was leaving the stadium. So I was sat in the Paul Strang stand, the main stand, on Tuesday. As I was leaving, it was Rob Tuvey was in the row in front of me, and he and somebody else, I think, is it Michael Hamilton?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
yeah?
One of the youth coaches, yeah. Actually,
yeah,
no, not one of the youth coach. I think he's one of the heads now, isn't he?
Yeah, with the recent restructuring and everything.
Yes.
And they were waving frantically at Jack Rudoni, who was making his way towards the tunnel. They were waving at him and sort of pushing him and pointing towards the stand behind the goal. And I saw it and I thought, they obviously, maybe they were sort of saying, you know, make sure you've clapped the fans, and maybe he hadn't milked it enough or something. I don't know what message they were getting through. I didn't think anything of it, and I couldn't, when I glanced up as I was making my way out, I didn't notice anything, I must be honest. It was only after the game when we heard reports of things having happened. Later, since then, obviously, we've had reports that the fan is alleged to have said something when Anthony Hartigan took a late corner, which was a poor delivery. Anthony Hartigan went back to confront him about what he'd said, at which point we believe the fan said something along the lines of, "You're shit, and you should never play for us again." Again, this is all second-hand information. We don't have this confirmed, but there's lots of things in this, and then Anthony's had to go back, apparently, and swore at the fan. Now, first things first, as opposed to first things third. I've never understood the mentality of yelling abuse at your own players. Now, people are probably going to listen to this, aren't they? And going to be saying, "What about you and Liam Trotter?" Well, I don't know. What did I say about Liam Trotter? Did I say anything about Liam Trotter whilst he was still at the club? I'd have to listen back that I probably wouldn't have said to his face, apart from the joke that was the worst crime ever committed by a Wimbledon fan in the history of bloody supporting Wimbledon, about doing something to him, which I'm not revisiting that whole thing. But on a match day and in person, no, what is the point? I'm not frothing at the sidelines, like yelling abuse at Liam Trotter for 90 minutes. On a match day, when you're all in it together, you're giving as much support as you can. Now, that's not to say we don't have moments of frustration where you have a misplaced pass or you miss a tackle. And we all do it, don't we? We all sort of curse to ourselves and be like, oh, for fuck's sake. And there was an audible one on Tuesday night when Anthony played a really poor pass, gave away possession in our own half. And it was quite a loud, frustrated reaction came from the fans. But it wasn't abusive or anything like that in the way that this fan at the end of the game has been. I don't understand why you would do that. And this goes back to my point. You know my bugbear about referees and things like that.
Yeah.
Everyone's agreed. You don't abuse your own players, but then it's like, well, yeah, but the rest's fair game. Well, no. Your arguments for not giving abuse to your own players are the same for not giving it to the referee. They're humans. They make mistakes. I saw something on Facebook. I laughed so hard when I saw on Tuesday night people moaning about the referees and how biased they are and how we always get the worst referees, as if we're any different to any other club in the Football League that doesn't think we always get rubbish referees. But that's another point. In terms of the original one, giving abuse to your own players, no one's ever going to defend that, are they? We need to put that in the book straight away.
We do. I think there's loads of things on here. I think we have to accept that we have some strange individual fans. Every club has them. We're no different.
The strangest ones are the ones that do this podcast every week. There are a bunch of weirdos.
But, when my wife sits with her dad in the disabled section, there's a group that she actually gets on well with now, but she never used to. And I've stood there one time last season, I think. And this was when Neil Hardy was still here. And literally within the first 5 minutes, I think the referee was questioned about his sexuality, of how good he was. Neil Hardy was told he was shit. And literally they wanted to moan, and I just sat there and laughed. And I was like, guys, give him a chance to be bad before you do it. Oh, we always say that. But sometimes people feel they pay their money, they're entitled to say what they want to say. I don't. That's the biggest problem, I'm very much about respecting referees. I find it amazing some of the abuse the referees get, and there was a certain individual who used to sit in the Paul Strength stand right at the front with his child, who would abuse the linesman or the what they call now assistant referees all game, and people used to laugh, and I sit there and think it's just not funny. I don't get it. Do you know what I mean? Just because you paid your money doesn't give you the right to abuse somebody. But I think we have to accept that we have some of these people. I think Anthony Hartigan will learn from it, in terms of he shouldn't have gone back. He should have been a bigger person. He's 20 now. Some people still say he's a kid. I remember being 20, just about, and I knew what was right and wrong. He's a professional. He shouldn't have gone back. I think he'll learn a lot from it. I don't think there's nothing we can do. Sometimes you've got, your own fans have got to call it out. Sometimes that's the best way to manage it. It doesn't mean that, you don't want people getting into arguments and trouble and stuff. But sometimes, fans tell you it's wrong to say it. But I think it's just a sorry situation. I don't necessarily believe he was in tears. That would concern me massively if someone said he was shit and shouldn't play for a club. Crikey, if he went to play for a club like Leeds or Forest or something, he did that most weeks. So it's part of his growing up in a professional environment. It's just sad, in a week where we've all clubbed together and, the bond is going from strength to strength and showing what a fan's own club can do and stick together. It's a shame that we've managed an isolated incident from an individual who's managed to sour the end of the game.
Now, I'm going to disagree with you slightly here, because I think if you give abuse or someone gives abuse to a player, and we've seen this many times down the years, I say, do you know what? Player has every right in the world, and I would support them completely for them to turn around and have a go back. Because we like you say, we're adults at the end of the day, and if you're, like you say, people pay their money, they think they can say whatever they like. If they're going to say it, then they have to be prepared to get it back. It's like one of those where if you're prepared, it's the old say, if you're going to give it, you've got to be prepared to take it back. So I would defend any player, because we've seen it many times down the years in Premier League instances and other games where, who was it, wasn't it Theo Walcott one year got he was getting abused by the Spurs fans. So much abuse. He was down injured. Loads and loads of abuse. So he held up two fingers to indicate 2-0 because Arsenal were 2-0 up. And people started throwing coins at him and stuff like that. It's like, oh, mate, like, who's in the wrong there? Clearly it's the Spurs fans, surely.
I know what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I just think that was an argument he was never going to win. No matter what he said.
That is true.
He was never going to win it. Do you know what I mean? If he's going to fight fire with fire, and I get that, he probably, he was probably frustrated with his own performance, which I didn't think was, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it was shocking because I think there was many players that didn't. It's interesting, Glyn Hodges saying that he felt it was a really big battling performance. I have some difference of opinion on that, if I'm being honest, when we can discuss that when we go through the roundup. But he's never going to win that argument. Yes, I agree with you. I used to laugh back in the day when we used to give, I think we'd done it before, giving ex-franchise players grief. Players we just don't like grief. And then I remember one scoring in front of the Athletics end, and he gave a bit back, which I thought was quite funny. And the uproar. Oh, I'm going to report him. And I'm thinking, come on, guys, you can't give a bit of abuse and then the moment they respond and give a bit of banter, you then, I don't think banter's a bad thing. We've had it many times with goalkeepers where we give a bit of abuse, but sometimes it's turned, in my opinion, a bit nasty. It's not banter. It's actually quite worrying sometimes. And we have to accept we have a younger fan base now who's just not used to the rules and engagement of football and are finding their way. We need to get on top of it. There is a number, isn't it, that you can use on your mobile phone, is that right, to report certain things? So I think, I think if someone did hear that and knows who it was, and it was as bad as being made out, sometimes Chinese whispers can get a little bit out of hand and it sounds really terrible 10 or 11 people down the line. But I don't think you're ever going to stop it. But I think Andy Hartigan, if it did happen, will learn a valuable lesson just to say, turn the other cheek, walk away. He's never going to win the argument. And, when he scores a goal, plays well, just run to that corner and just to remind that individual he's still there of him doing well.
Yeah, I wonder what I would do in that situation. Because you're right, the best thing to do because football, you get an abuse for the stands and everything like that. At the end of the day, I think we've been down this line before, or similar conversations about it. At the end of the day, the team are out there doing a job. They're getting paid for it. They have to concentrate on what they're doing. And in reality, what the fans say and what is said doesn't really matter, does it? Let's be honest with you. In their heads, it shouldn't do. They should just be concentrating on what their job is and doing that to the best of their ability. And surely he should be, like you say, maybe he should be secure enough in that and secure enough his own ability to ignore it. Is it a worry that at the moment he doesn't like... We've talked about Hartigan a lot because we've always said immensely talented player. Easily, you'd put almost technically sound player. Could argue Wordsworth possibly the rival there, but I mean, you can take your pick maybe, but it's not really happened for him this season. It's nothing to do with his ability or his effort. It's just that, like you said, the way we go about, the way we approach games, the formation we play and everything like that, it's not suited to getting the very best out of him, is it?
No, and Glenn's got to make, he's probably already made a decision already, but he's got to really have an idea of what he's going to play next season in terms of formation, which is probably going to be the 3-5-2 or the 3-4-3. He definitely sticks with a 3. What style of play we're going to play? We're going to try and play through the middle, we're going to try and play through the wide areas, or we're going to try and play long ball. I'm very much a believer he's got to get an idea. Let's be fair, it was Waddy's squad at the beginning of the season, and even though Glenn might have had some influence in that, Waddy would have set out how we're going to play. Glenn's got to work out next year if he's going to, if he's not going to play through the middle and it's not really, he wants more batting individuals in there, then Andy Hartigan might be surplus to requirements. And that's not because of ability. That just might be the way we're choosing to play. I think it's a big season for Andy Hartigan, this one anyway. He's still got 14 games to go. I think he's had a really good couple of weeks, if I'm being honest with you. Yes, Ipswich wasn't great, but he wasn't alone in that. But I think he has started to improve his performances and playing a bit higher up the pitch. My only concern is, and it's not about what the incident happened on Tuesday night, is that he's 20 now. soon to turn 21. Amazingly, that's what happens when when you're a year older than 20.
Thanks for explaining the linear nature of time.
But he's not going to, he's not going to be considered as one of the younger players very soon. I think he must be close to 100 appearances, or at least 50, 100. So eventually he's going to have to, I won't say grow up, but he's going to be one of the older people. Because let's be fair, we are very much a young team, and I think. I said to you before, didn't I? I've backed off a little bit over the last sort of months when, I was really annoyed with the inconsistency. But we have to accept we have a very, very young team, and we promote academy players coming through. That's great. But as fans, we have to accept that actually, they're being inconsistent, and we need to actually turn the other cheek, and we can't be giving them that grief, no matter how bad it is. But also the club lead that as well. The club and Glyn Hodges and everything needs to lead that and go, this is going to be our philosophy. This is what we're going to have to do. We need you to support them. It doesn't mean you're going to get the individual idiots who are just going to still do it. But I think if we understand it, and that's what I've started to realise now. So I'm a bit more softer on the grief that I give sometimes on roundups, because I said, we're inconsistent, and that's because of the age. But the good thing is we get to see some really exciting talent in Paul Osu and Jack Rudoni. We have to accept actually, and they're not going to be consistent over a 10-game period. They're going to have 2 or 3 games that are not going to be up to scratch.
I agree wholeheartedly with what you've just said. I was just thinking about my comment about the linear nature of time. Is time linear? That's a philosophical debate. Should we scrap the football for the rest of the podcast? Let's talk about that one. Because there are people who say it's just a construct. Time is just a social construct. So really, how does it work? I don't know. Is it even time that ages us? We just don't know these things. It's the mysteries of the world.
Watching Wimbledon play football ages me, I know that.
Well, it has done this week, for varying and different reasons. You've mentioned there about sort of the inconsistency of young players and not giving them too much grief for it. I think it's a good time to point out. Since Glyn's come in, and again, this has nothing to do with Wally, this is just my observations, we have seen improvements in a lot of players. I think the coaching has been fantastic, and there's been never a question of effort. And I know I've said this on the last couple of podcasts. We've not really taken to this group of players as much, have we? We've said this the last 2 seasons, not really, but can't fault any of them for effort. And that's all we really ask for, isn't it? So we perhaps have got really not much to, or if anything, to moan about particularly. What I will say is taking the 2 games this week, Fleetwood the defeat, 2-1 just for a change, having equalised, then we go and lose 2-1. It's just Groundhog Day on that one. And then the 0-0 draw. I mean, positives to take out of both, but also frustrations with both. Fleetwood, what did you make of Fleetwood? They struck me as a team that were quite smart in how they approached us. When I reflected on it, I thought, during the game, we're actually looking decent. We're playing some nice football. We're passing it around. Fleetwood don't look any good, to be honest with you. They didn't impress me at all. But on reflection, I thought, well, they've probably scouted us, realised Wimbledon haven't got the quality to really break us down or beat us. So if we just pack our box and defend our goal, like our 18-yard line, and sit deep, they won't break us down. And they did that, put bodies in the way, keeper didn't really have a save to make, and then they realised that we always had a mistake in us, and unfortunately that's what's cost us in the end, two goals that are just riddled with defensive errors. Yeah,
I think the difference between us and Fleetwood was that they've got probably match winners in the key areas, which are forwards. They managed to bring on Madden, who caused the problem, but they got match winners up front. They got good forwards, and that's where they've obviously spent their money. They haven't spent it on their defence, because I don't think they were great defensively. But they had 4 shots on target and scored with 2. I know one was corner. Whereas we had 17 corners, 19 shots, but only 2 on target. And there's your story. I think, we kept knocking at the door. The ball didn't roll our way when it could have been. It went for them in a way, and that's the way it goes. But I'll be truthful, I wasn't overly impressed with Fleetwood. They're a workmanlike side with the ability up front where they've spent their money. You could argue that we spent our money probably on the back line and we have the forwards. Our back line is actually not bad. But you can't, goal scorers, that's what they are. They win you games. And it's frustrating when, the bench of the other teams can bring on the quality that they can. And then they win the game for you. I wasn't overly impressed with Fleetwood. But they got match winners, and that's what we don't have.
Yeah, and is it a case, again, with like you say, they spent more money, they're going to have better individuals, and they were as good as they needed to be on the day?
Yeah, they didn't play well. I don't think, they're sitting top half of the table, so you sort of think they obviously played well in certain things. But I just, you've only got to look at the players they've got up front in terms of they've got Morris, who's the kid from Scunthorpe, who's got wicked delivery from out wide areas and gets, scores goals with free kicks. You've got Evans up front. From no matter what you think about him, he was rated like a £2 million player back in his day, and he's more than good enough in League One. And then you've got Madden, who would probably walk into quite a lot of teams, and he comes off the bench. So I think the problem is when you've got people in those positions in key areas, then they've always got a chance. And even when they play badly, we had that when we had Lyle Taylor and, Bayo and stuff like that. We could play badly and win games because you just had people in certain areas that would get you the goals and you could have a really rubbish performance. But no one remembered that because you won 1-0. And Fleetwood, they won't remember how bad they played, because I think they did. But ultimately, they've run away 2-1 winners and quite fortunate.
Yeah, and they've got another double over us and are turning into a bit of our bogey team in some respects at the moment, although that goes for a few other teams. I mean, Fleetwood are now 3 wins in a row in League One. They're unbeaten in 6. Only one looking at this, one defeat in 12 in the league. I mean, there's a lot of draws in there, but that would seem to echo what you're saying. Workmanlike team, don't give away much. Perhaps should be scoring more, like you say, with the talent they've got. They won 1-0 at Wickham on Tuesday evening. Ched Evans was sent off. Joey Barton was sent off. They were away to Wickham. That game sounds like, the definition of shithousery football, to be honest with you. Could you imagine what that game must have been like to watch and be involved in? Probably more frustrating to watch for many people than our game on Tuesday night. And no shots on target from us against an Ipswich team that we will be playing next year. There is no quality in that Ipswich team. They had no way. They could not figure out really how to break us down. They got Joe Day to make a couple of saves I would expect him to make, but they sort of came from just chucking balls in the box and winning off second balls and things like that. I feel like against Ipswich this season, it's 2 games where I feel disappointed to have only come away with a point from them. I think there was more on offer there.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you look at the league and you look at how teams play, Ipswich have been known for most of this season as a long ball team, a direct team. They try and hit their forwards early and then work off the seconds and stuff like that. And that's what they did against us. But I felt it was a game we didn't want to lose. So I felt we set up to win the seconds, and we did that. The problem with that is your midfield and your midfielders and defenders, are so close together because you want to stay compact that you then detach yourself from your forwards, and that's what we did all night. Pinnock and Piggott were isolated. We couldn't get out. If we were going to play a ball, we had to play a long ball. So we literally just traded long ball after long ball, and in the end, really, the chances come from a few knockdowns and Day done well with, I think there was only a couple that I think he hadn't stretched to say. The rest were quite straightforward. But it's no surprise that, our defenders were I thought Tyler Thomas was outstanding, I must admit. I thought he was really, really good. But we just lacked, I think we took too much into consideration of what their strengths were, and we didn't play to our strengths. I felt we could have had a go at them if we wanted to. Don't get me wrong, I'll take the point, it's a good point, but when you think on reflection, if you look at the league places of like Ipswich and Fleetwood and how we played against each of them, it feels like we gave Ipswich Town that respect that we didn't give Fleetwood, when realistically they're both the same. They're 1 point adrift from each other. Actually, Fleetwood got a couple of games in their hand on Ipswich. So we didn't really show the respect to Fleetwood. Is that because they're a small club from Blackpool? And Ipswich are these, ex-Premier League, but they're in our division for a reason. And I didn't think they were that great. So I was a bit disappointed we didn't get amongst them. I watched it on TV at home. It wasn't the greatest to watch. I can imagine it was even worse being there when it was cold. But I'll take the point, but I just feel a little bit like, could we have had a go at them? Because I don't think they were that great.
No, I think we could have done, but it's part of our issue, strikers, and not bringing any of them on and persisting with Pinnock and Piggott. And this isn't to dig out Mitch Pinnock in the way that I have seen people do, but just not a forward.
No, and it's not his fault. That's not his fault. He's been asked to do a job as a forward just as much. McLaughlin has been asked to play as a right wing back when we actually had a wing back on the bench. That might be because Wagstaff, we probably didn't think he could give us, a whole game. But you have to think, you have to think, if you're being honest at the moment, we're not going to see Roscoe or Wood next season. I don't see how, because even when they have been on the bench, we're not using them. We brought Wagstaff on for Reilly, Rudoni come on for Sanders. But we left two forwards on the bench, and we left our loan signing from Rotherham on the bench, who can't play Saturday because he's obviously going to be he can't play against his parent club. We have
there's not a word for that, like cup tied.
I know, just banned from playing. You can't.
Banned? Revoked.
I think it's more fun when you play against your parent club, wasn't it? I think, if I remember properly, Real Madrid had that when they one of their players they loaned out scored against them in a cup game. So obviously they weren't worried about that, but he scored against them, which I think is a bit of a weird one when they're paying your salary most of the times. But
I have two words for you: David and Nielsen.
Yeah, we all remember that, don't we? When the person who was in charge didn't understand anything about football. Bless them. Actually, don't bless them, just hit them. But yeah,
careful.
Yeah, of course, I wouldn't encourage violence, but we all know that worst person was. I think we've, recruitment in the summer is massive for us. Our forward line hasn't been good enough this year. No matter what our budget is, we haven't really. We're top heavy defensively, I feel, and we haven't been able to get the goal scorers. And we're trying to play people in positions they can't. Pinnock's trying. I think, to be fair, I can't moan about him for work effort. I know sometimes people do moan that he's sometimes a bit static in certain areas, but I don't think that's because he's lazy. I think that's just an awareness of his position and what he's supposed to do. But it's a hard gig at the moment. But I was crying. I was really frustrated that we didn't chuck any pace on. I don't understand what I don't understand what Pinnock did that Roscoe can't do. But I know what Roscoe can do. He's a forward. He knows what a forward position's like. And I just don't get why we didn't play a forward in a forward position, But it tells you that Glynn doesn't rate them. That's obvious. You can see that miles off. That's fine. It's his choice.
And Pinnock what was the issue? Going back to the Fleetwood game, you mentioned there sort of perhaps he's not switched on, or he's not lack of effort, but sort of maybe not as defensively aware. That seemed to be the issue with the second goal against Fleetwood, where a gap has appeared in our midfield. They've actually been able to get some width, which they were trying to do all game but couldn't manage it. Pinnock's tracked back, but then he seems to have just stopped in our box and got himself caught in a bit of no man's land.
Yeah.
Do you think he should be, for me, in that position? He's followed back. I think it's a Mackay, the sub that came on for Fleetwood.
Yeah.
He's followed him back. Mackay's gone on the outside of McLaughlin, at which point I would have thought Pinnock just needs to leg it towards our goal, just to be an extra body in between the ball and the goal, essentially. But he just stops. It's inexplicable, really. Yeah,
he could have doubled up. He could have been the first one to approach and get the first tackle in and McLaughlin cover, or he could have gone around and covered, but he didn't. The problem is McLaughlin, and he's played well actually at right wing back, but he fails with a tackle, and it's a bit of a weak tackle in the end, and then he gets past him. So you can look at Pinnock and say, why did he not cover? I think he thought McLaughlin was going to cover it. He should have really. It was a bit of a weak tackle, and then he's got, by then he's in and he's on the byline. But I say this all the time, with goals you can always pick holes in a lot of goals. There's always, unless they're 35 yarders, there's always something you could have done better in a goal that you can look at and analyse. But I think I just think he's played in so many different positions recently. I think it's very difficult for him. He's learning on the job. It's like, and that's a very difficult thing. But it's frustrating. But we haven't, obviously, the injuries we're getting now are frustrating. Wordsworth's got injured. We are getting unlucky with injuries, because Wordsworth got injured in the warm down on Saturday when he didn't even play. And I'm sure he didn't play because he was going to start against Ipswich. And then we lose Kwesi Appiah of an injury, but actually we thought he'd be better playing in the under-23s at Southend than against Ipswich. We have a lot of injuries to key players this season, and that's, when people go to squad, people look at the squad on a Saturday and even on Tuesday, that's what we're left with, because when the senior pros get injured and don't play, we then have a problem. And it's something we have to address in the summer in terms of how we feel our salary distribution is. And, I think I've said to you before, Kwesi goes, no problem. But I'm more convinced, even though Wordsworth plays really well when he plays, doesn't play enough for me. And I would no doubt believe he's on the top salary. So I wouldn't keep him in the summer.
There's a few players I want to touch on. You've mentioned there, Wordsworth perhaps playing and unable to in midfield. But in midfield, Callum Reilly, fast becoming what I would consider our most improved player this season. Tremendous effort that he's putting in. He's getting into Sammy Moore territory with the amount of yards that he's covering every single game. And there's also a bit of quality coming in an attacking sense as well. So, yeah, at the moment, you can count me as a Callum Reilly fan.
Yeah, I agree. You could always see he had ability, but he just got caught sometimes in between. I didn't know what his job was, or maybe he didn't know what his job was. But he come with a good reputation. Fans at Gillingham didn't want to see him go. That's always a good sign when you get players that are released, and fans really disappointed. And Wagstaff was the same, wasn't it? They were really disappointed they got rid of him. And you sometimes think, well, why are they? What are we seeing that they did, or what we're not seeing? But, those two players now, Reilly and Wagstaff, you can see now they're starting to... Wagstaff is very quickly becoming one of my favourites, so I won't lie about that. And that's not because he's got decent ability. He's not earth-shattering, but he's a wind-up merchant and he works hard and he just drives on that team, and I like that. I can always accept someone not being good enough, but if they work hard and really feel like they're fighting for their cause, then they got my support all day. And, Reilly is doing the same, do you know what I mean? He's a bit niggly, he's experienced, and I think one of the good things that Wagstaff and O'Reilly are doing is they're helping the youngsters around them. And that's going to be priceless for their development and how we're going to perform.
One youngster you mentioned, or you might want to mention, Jack Rudoni. This lad is going to be a player.
Yeah. Impressive. He's gradually finding his feet now. It's like... And it takes a little while because, he comes into the first team setup, plays games. They always say the paces are totally different in league football because it's just a step up, isn't it? It's a massive step. And I think in a way he's trying to find his feet, and I think he's gradually now getting used to the League One's football in terms of the hustle and bustle of it all. And now he's starting to show his ability, and, the assist that he had for Fleetwood was just magical, wasn't it? He got the ball outside the area, went into the area where they couldn't touch him, and they just dinked the ball up to the back stick, which was just like, thank you very much. But he's got goals in him, he's got assists in him. I really like him, I really do. We've got to get him on contract, make sure we keep him on contract. But yeah, I do like him, and but the only thing we have to accept is he was on the bench on Tuesday, and people said, why is that? We have to accept that he won't be as consistent and he can't play all these games back to back. I was laughing, the 16-year-old at Birmingham, is it Bennington?
Bellingham.
Bellingham reported to have £35 million at the moment being offered for him in the summer. But he's had 21 starts this season as a 16-year-old. That's unheard of. But he's obviously a special talent. So it doesn't happen a lot for kids to play a lot of games. So we have to accept that with Jack, but he's got a good mind in the midfield, O'Reilly, and we've got a hell of a player on our hands.
I swear, Jude Bellingham, who is the youngster you've mentioned there, wasn't he the mum in the OXO adverts?
Yeah.
I'm gonna Google this now. I could swear that's who it was. I mean, that's quite a career change, and obviously he's had a reversal of age, which, some people are lucky enough to experience. I mean, I'm sort of not one of those people, sadly. I'm going to have to turn 26 this year. There's no getting away from it. But I'm going to Google this now whilst I ask you my final question in regards to the football this week. Just
very quickly before I finish that thing, they're saying that Bellingham is currently on £145 a week because he's still not got a professional contract yet. And they reckon he will get an offers up to £100,000 a week for his first contract when he moves. That's unbelievable at 16. And do you know what? That's where he's going to really need to be looked after, because that is it's life-changing figures, isn't it? We need to make sure, he's a 16-year-old, but he's got so much to learn. But I do worry he's going to have too much money early on. And you see these wonder kids all of a sudden get a big contract, and yeah, they don't perform.
Football is fucked when you hear those numbers. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. I cannot wait for the bubble to burst if it ever does, because it's obscene, these sums of money. They really are. But yeah. Last question, as I say, I saw it spoken, referenced somewhere on social media this week. Our back three on Tuesday night, McDonald, Thomas and O'Neill, was quoted as being our second choice back three because our first choice would be Sorensen, Nightingale and Callum Reilly. One, do you agree with that? And two, if not, who would your first choice three centre-halves be?
Good point, actually. I think if Will's fit, Will walks into that squad. I personally would probably play Will Nightingale as the centre of the three. I would play Sorensen as wide, the left side of the three centre halves, and I would play Thomas on the right side. I wouldn't play Callum Reilly. I don't think he's in our top three defenders. If you look at Tyrone Thomas has played. I think when I looked at it, I think he's a second player. Sorry, Piggott's got the most minutes, but behind that is Tyrone Thomas. I think that tells you all you need to know, really, that Thomas is seen as quite a regular in there. So that'd be mine: Sorensen, Nightingale, and Thomas. I
don't think Sorensen gets in. If it was me in charge, and purely for the reason, there's nothing against him, he's not our player. So, do you know what? I'd rather go Will, Terrell and Rod.
Well, Rod's the one. It's basically a toss-up between Rod and Sorensen because they're the left-sided centre-halves or left-footed. I wouldn't play O'Neill in the position he plays. I think he's a right wing-back. I think he's very good in that position. I know you've got to find a position for Wagstaff. But this goes back to my point about we keep trying to put square things in round. So, what's the word? I can't think what it is. You know what I mean? We're just trying to move people around. When let's get person in position, play the position they can play, and then go from there.
Square pegs in round holes.
That'd be the one. I couldn't remember, so I was going to try again.
Oh, well, that's up there with Turf Mill for me.
I knew as soon as I started saying it, I couldn't remember what the thing was. But, I just think in the summer we've really got to sort this out, Target, a lot of clubs do it now. Target position, who the best players in that position. Don't go for the top five because you won't get the top five and then work on the rest. And I think that way is better. At the moment, it's too much of a mismatch for me. And that's why we see players, being criticised when actually they're being played out of position. That's not their fault.
Linda Bellingham, of course it was.
Oh, that one, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Before we look elsewhere in the league, in terms of our performances this week, who do you think had the best week for us performance-wise?
I'd go with Tyrone Thomas. I thought he was out. I think he's very reassuring now. I think he's a very good defender. I'd say Tyrone Thomas, I think, has had the best week.
Worst week?
You have to think it's a toss-up between Wordsworth and Kwesi Appiah. Wordsworth getting injured in a warm down, which is unreal, and Kwesi more important at a Southend under-23 game than a League One game at home to Ipswich. So, but then I don't think it's going to bother Kwesi too much. I think he knows he's gone in the summer. Wordsworth, I think, will be worried because he needs to look at a new contract, and then people are going to look at his injury record and think, can he still cut it?
Elsewhere in the division, pick of the results, I picked out Blackpool 2, Gillingham 3. So Simon Grayson went back in at Blackpool and he has been relieved of his duties and he has been wished well in his future endeavours. Blackpool have been dropping and we're playing them in a couple of weeks. Our next home game actually is Blackpool. So I'm kind of looking forward to that because I think Blackpool, the West state they're in, are a team there for the taking and we've done well against them at home in the previous seasons.
Yeah.
And the issue I have, though, looking at results elsewhere and everything like that, is we are, for all this positive talk about how much effort we're doing and how performances are decent and what have you, we're 1 win in 7 ourselves. So we're not in great form either. We just have to be mindful of this one.
Yeah, in terms of result-wise, I would probably say Peterborough for the two results they had. They won 4-0 on Saturday, 4-0 on Tuesday night. The 4-0 against Oxford was it's a big win, and then a 4-0 against Rochdale, but that's quite impressive and moves them up to second in the table. Do you know what? I think I said before in our last week's podcast, we've just now got to match what Tranmere do. It's a single fight out between us and Tranmere in the last 14 games. So that's the one. If you look at the last 8 games, their points per game is 0.25, and our points per game is 0.75. So if you match us up against Tranmere, we're still quite healthy in that sort of side of it. You know, when I'm looking at points per game, one thing that I said this, and I think I'm going to be right, and I like being right because it's good for the ego. But I did say there's going to be one team that's going to fall like a stone, and I did say it'd be Bristol Rovers. They are in free fall, not won a game yet under their new manager, and their last 8, their points per game is 0.38, which is the only 10 points difference between us and Bristol Rovers, and I can see us finishing above them. I really can.
Yeah, they've scored fewer goals than us this season, which takes some doing. Shrewsbury, blimey, they've barely scored any goals this season. What's going on there? But then Shrewsbury, they score goals and then they get ruled out because of VAR when they're not offside. It's ridiculous. But, hey.
Yeah, VAR.
Let's not go down the route of VAR. Right. Let's talk very quickly on the bond. So it is 8:57 on Thursday, the 13th? Oh, it's Valentine's Day, of course it is. So yes, it is Thursday the 13th. So I am going to quickly type in ploughlanebond.com. If you've not done this already, that's the website you need. And the progress bar shows that the bond so far has raised £4,120,044.
Amazing, isn't it? It's amazing.
Those single pounds are very, very irritating for people with OCD.
Yeah, we have a laugh with Mark Hendricks, who hates that. I think his OCD kicks in. But that's really impressive because I think, if I remember properly, we were about 3.8, 3.9 at the end. This time last night, Wednesday evening. Sorry, it looks like roughly about. I think I looked at about 150k average. Might be higher than that now. I just think it's a magnificent effort. It really is. An email come out from the Dons Trust about the average payment's been 4,000. The average interest rate is around about 2%, and I think 7 years was the average duration. So whatever money we get from this bond is going to be at a damn sight cheaper rate than we will get from a commercial loan. But at the moment, we're well on target to hit 5 million. I think we will go into extra time on the bond. I don't see any reason why you would stop something that's still naturally, if it was only getting 25k a day, then you probably would think, okay, we're not going to get much more. But I know I did see they basically targeted 1,000 streets in terms of distributing the leaflets, and they were up to 770. That's great. Everyone has really put, if they can put money into the bond, they have. If they can help by putting the flyers and drumming up interest, they've done that. Hey, look, do you know what? Women of fans, we always said we're unique. And this has shown, a uniqueness to us that is just, it shouldn't surprise us, but it still does. I think we're going to hit 5 million. I wouldn't be surprised if we got up to 6. I'll be truthful. And then a commercial loan is next to nothing. And then we look at the fun of spending that money and getting ourselves ready for August.
Of course, the bond window could, as you've mentioned there, go into extra time. Unfortunately, the big 6 banks have asked for replays to be scrapped for all fundraising initiatives, which is quite selfish of them. But yeah, outstanding effort. I can only echo what you said there, Stu. There's nothing I can really add to what you said there. But the date, I forget that tomorrow is the closing date for it. So sorry. As you are listening to this, listeners, today is the final date for it, isn't it? So it has to go to its time if you want to be pushing up, as you referenced there, Stu, the 4.5, 5 million mark. But it's all good. We still have a long way to go with many aspects of the new stadium. But I think we shall save that conversation for another week. In terms of getting the financing for it and getting it over the line and sorted, ready for next season, still lots of hurdles to jump, still lots of hoops to get through. But as it stands, we're just going to concentrate on the fantastic fundraising efforts to this point. And
I went past there on Saturday on the way to Kings Meadow. We made a detour, got caught in so much traffic. It made me realise what way to travel into Plough Lane next season. But I don't know if you've been past there, Nick, recently. I went there when it had all been flattened. But I was gobsmacked by what I saw. You see the pictures, of course you do, online and stuff like that, but I don't think anything prepares you for when you actually go, because the site is massive. The flats are going up ridiculously quickly. And I didn't realise how big the West Stand is. I know, that sounds stupid, but you don't really, because it's there's not much, when you look at the shots, there's not much around it to compare it against. But actually, when you go there, you can actually see how big the West Stand is. And I must admit, I was majorly excited. My wife was laughing her head off. I was so excited by it. But I think it's one of those things you need to see. So I'd encourage people to go and have a look. Do you know what I mean? I've tried to stay away from it because I was a bit worried about our finances, didn't want to get too excited. But I'm a big kid again, and I can't wait.
Current money raised, as we've said, £4,120,000 and £4,120,044, and 44, of course, is your age. Just saying.
Yay! I know. I don't act it.
Mine's 25.
Of course.
And of course. So, right. All that said, moving on to the next bit. Paul Osu. Before we do that, because I forget to do this because of the way we write the script, and then we're going through the format, and then I ignore the format, and I forget to do it. Music quiz. 2 weeks ago, the music we started the show with was Loser by Beck, and that was correctly identified on Twitter by Baylorhan at Baylorhan1 and Mr. T. Thompson at Mr. T. Thompson of These Fine Gentlemen, American band, fans of the podcast, fans of the club, and soon to be making, I think, a journey across the pond to come and visit us. I suggest, once, can't get my words out this evening, we are in the new stadium. We very much look forward to that. Last week, it was Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds. I'm sure that was one of your favourites back in the day, Stu. And again, that was identified correctly by Baylorhan at Baylorhan1 and John Hudson at John Beans, who says Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, and Herman Haridason. Now, I think that was his answer to Paul Osu, but I'm very sorry, John. I was incorrect. Did you work out who Paul Osu was last week, Stu? No,
Joel, I totally forgot. I'm being truthful. I can't remember who I guessed now. You've done me in the last 2 weeks, which I've not been happy about.
The major clues last week were that he played with Lewis Burn-Morte, Jermaine Defoe, Frank Lampard, Paul Merson-Carnu. He won the Player of the Year award every year he played for us, which was 4 consecutive seasons. He was most famous for playing left-back at Arsenal. Therefore, the answer is
Nigel Winterburn, which I did see on Twitter. Someone did put it on Twitter, and I looked and went,
yes.
That makes sense. So that was the answer. I wouldn't have got that because I wasn't thinking that far back.
Well, congratulations to Chris Taylor at Chris. What's this Twitter handle about? Come on, sort it out. At CDT1711_Chris. And then Richard Stobbs at AFCW Richard, both correctly identified Nigel Winterburn. So well done, guys. I'm also going to check, because I haven't done a quick scan of our emails this evening, so I'll just double-check none came through on there again. But well done. This week, Stu, I think you're going to get it this week. Don't reveal it if you do. No pressure, but I think you will. So, 5 players that this former Wimbledon player has played with at different clubs throughout his career. David Healy, Robbie Keane, Aaron Lennon, Jamie Redknapp, and James Coppinger. I think there's a huge clue with that last name.
Well, the Dave Coppinger is the Doncaster lad, isn't it?
He might well be.
He is, because, I remember. The only person I can think that went there would be Neil Sullivan.
Are you sure about that one?
Probably not now. I'm going to stick with Neil Sullivan, I think, for the time being, and I'm trying to think of the other players. Robbie Keane would have probably been Spurs. David Healy, I'm not too sure. Who are the other two?
Aaron Lennon and Jamie Redknapp.
Sorry, Aaron Lennon and
Jamie Redknapp.
Jamie Redknapp. So again, that could have been when were they at Spurs at the same time. I'm going to stick with Neil Sullivan for my first round guess.
Okay, how about 2 managers, Claudio Ranieri and Glenn Hoddle?
Ranieri would have been Chelsea when he was at Chelsea, wasn't it? Would that have been around about the time? Oh, I can't think now. Glenn Hoddle would have been at Spurs. I'm going to stick with Neil Sullivan. I can't think of anyone else who played at Doncaster. Which is,
there's lots of players that have played at Doncaster.
Yes, but of course with a connection to us. I'm going to stay with Neil Sullivan.
Last one, not Wimbledon related, but more to do with his wider career. He kept a clean sheet at Wembley Stadium. He has kept a clean sheet at Wembley Stadium. I mean, that gives away the position, surely.
Well, defenders can still get clean sheets, can't they? Yeah, because I'm just trying to think. If it's a goalkeeper, there's no one else I don't think that's played with that level. No, I'll stick with Neil Sullivan. Yes.
Okay.
I know you're not going to tell me if it's right or not, but I'm going to stick with Neil Sullivan this time.
Well, I might put a poll on Twitter just to see if people agree with you or disagree with you and see what people say. And if you've got any other suggestions, at 9YRS Podcast, you may well do. That's what you'll do. Tweet us and keep an eye out at 9YRS Podcast for that. Thank you, Stu. No emails, so I'm going to move on to this week's fixtures. We've got 2 games coming up. Away to Rotherham, Storm, Dennis. What's the word? Storm, Dennis, I don't know. Could ruin it. Could call a postponement. Anyway.
Oh, you mean that Storm that's been going? It was called something different, wasn't it?
No, there's a new one. So we had Storm Kira last week.
Ah, okay.
And then we've got Storm Dennis. So Storm Dennis Permitting, I think, is the right word to use.
Because they're named after the people that discovered them, aren't they? That's how they name these storms.
I know.
That's how I remember reading it. That's how they do it.
Well, I thought it was alphabetical. They just said, so the first storm of the calendar year starts with an A, and then B, C, D, and so on.
But then you never get to Z then, do you? There's probably a reason for that, because...
Well, yeah, because you're going to struggle, but...
No, I remember reading it somewhere. They basically, the person who finds it or recognises it first is named after them. So I always want someone to work... we need some people to work like someone called Mavis or Betty in the... What's it called? The meteorologist, whatever it's called. The weather people.
The Meteorological Society.
That's it. We need some better names, don't we? Mavis, Betty, Doris.
I'm really not sure about this one, Stu. We're going to have to put this one to the listeners as well.
Storm Trotter. It wouldn't move.
Maybe if we get to so many storms down the line, it could be Storm L. Isn't this what they do? I'm swearing. It's like, is it storms you're thinking of, or is it something else?
No, it's storms. I remember. I was just as interested how they named these things. I remember reading it.
I swear it's alphabetical. That's why the last one was Kira, and the next one is Dennis, and the next one's going to be Eric, and the next one's going to be Felipe.
That's a storm in a teacup, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know. I'll have a look. I swear. I was thinking, just the childish in my head, thinking what stupid names you could have for them. Do you know what I mean? But I suppose if it is alphabetical, how do they decide what? How do we get to Dennis? Weird, isn't it? See, it normally starts in America. It normally starts over the Caribbean, doesn't it? That's where all the sort of the winds sort of build.
Yeah, I don't know what words you use. Yeah, build. It seems fair enough.
Anyway, if anyone knows, tweet us if I'm talking rubbish, which is probably good chance.
We shall find out. You do say there is a child inside of you, and the doctors say if they remove it, you'll die. But moving on to the next one. Rotherham United is the fixture.
Do we have to?
Well, here's what I'm going to say to you, Stu. We're rubbish away from home, but Rotherham at home are unbeaten in 6. They've won their last 5 at home. I don't think that run will carry on. I think we're going to do a smash and grab and come away with an unexpected 3 points, because I am forever optimistic. They have, of course, won their last 3. They have won 5 of their last 6 in League One. They are top of the league. They have players like Vassell and Matt Crooks and I was going to say Matt Smith. It's not Matt Smith at all. It's Michael Smith. It's a hard game. Plus, it's a long journey to New York as well.
Yeah, do you know what? I know you're probably thinking that because you're going this weekend. So I don't want to say you're going to have a pointless journey, but I think it's a real tough ask. We're playing a lot of games at the moment, aren't we? As well, that's the problem. Hey, look, Joe, we've got Rotherham and Oxford this week. I would happily take 2 points or 2-3 points from both those games. But I just think they're top of the league for a reason. Rotherham know how to play this league. They play it very well. Play percentage football. Got the big lads up top. They've also got Matt Crooks in the midfield, who's very good, and they don't let many goals in, do they? So yeah, it's going to be a tough ask.
It's a big ask, and then the following Tuesday, that rearranged fixture away at Oxford United, which I won't be going to. I went to Oxford last season. I've been there enough times now. Not the greatest away day, to be honest, but
and it's a better time to play.
Game.
It's a better time to play them as well. They've dropped to 10th. I think if I remember properly, when they played us and beat us at home, they went top.
I think did they go second? I think because we had Bristol Rovers who could have gone second had they beaten us, and then the following game we had Oxford who did go second because they beat us.
Wow, and you could say both dropped, didn't they? But I don't think Oxford would drop as much. But you look at them 10th, they've got some games in hand because of their cup activity. You could argue it's probably a good time to play them. They've had a few bad results recently, so I'm a bit more confident than I would have been when we looked at playing Oxford at home, and you think, we've got to play them in a couple of months. But yeah, we've got to try and pick up some points and try and match whatever Tranmere do. That's the key thing. I know I keep talking about it, but realistically, it's a 2-horse race now. I'm not too sure Southampton can get out of the trouble they're in. But
Sorry, do you know what? Southampton?
Oh yeah, Sol Campbell thinks he manages Southampton. You've not seen that?
No, I've not heard this. What's going on?
If he had an interview with the after the game in the week, he had an interview with the Quest people, and they had to stop it because he said he was managing Southampton.
Oh God!
There's a clip of it, and basically the guy goes, "Oh, we're going to have to stop that," and he goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because you called your team Southampton."
My word!
I know.
Maybe he doesn't actually know.
Oh,
Maybe
he looks really shocked. Like, how can you compare Southampton and Southend? How can you compare them two?
I'm a bit, yeah. What a weirdo.
Yeah, if I'm sure people have seen it. If they've not, go on to. I think I saw it in the Daily Mail, but there's loads of. Yeah, it's funny as anything. He refers to Southampton, so I'm not too sure Southampton can get out of trouble really this season.
I think Danny Ings. I think they'll be absolutely fine, to be honest with you. That's all I'll say about that. Other fixtures in League One the weekend, Rochdale versus Tranmere seems to be the one to stand out by an absolute mile for us to keep an eye on. So I'm sure we'll be doing that. And that is it, really. Updates from Rodden will be on Twitter at 9wireless podcast, depending on how much data I've got, to be honest with you. So if I don't have any data, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lie. It costs money. It costs hard cash money, which we don't have. And yeah, we do need to start investigating these possibilities again. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. The only other thing I'm going to say, Stu, we've been talking about TV in the previous weeks and things on Netflix and what have you and things like this. And this was just brought to my attention. I was listening to Spotify before the game to find a song to which to start the podcast with this week, and I still haven't found one. So I'll be doing this after. But as the songs are going through, I'm hearing songs I'm recognising from sitcoms, namely Friends and How I Met Your Mother. Now, clearly Friends is the show of my generation, and it's arguably my favourite TV show ever. It's not perfect. There are issues with the writing of said show. That's fine. So I'm going to venture, even though it's not as popular and well regarded and not as big, and people don't, it was not a pop culture thing that in the way Friends was. How I Met Your Mother was a better written show than Friends. Is that a controversial opinion? Or, I mean, you've got two options here, Stu, or three options. One, do you agree with me? Two, do you disagree with me? Three, do you not care?
The thing is, I've never watched Friends. I've watched it.
What?
I know, this is, people were laughing. When my wife laughed at me. Never watched Friends, never watched Gavin and Stacey when it was on. I just got...
That's fine. You can get away with not watching Gavin and Stacey.
Yes, I've watched individual episodes, but never followed it. You know, I know who the characters are in Friends, but never really watched it. So I suppose, I would say three, don't care. I tell you what I would do, though. I've been watching some, on Netflix, I've been watching some really good, what have I been watching this week? So I watched You, which I've finished. Great, that is. I watched The Umbrella Academy, which was a recommendation from Mark Hendricks. Brilliant. Then I've watched A Stranger. Proper mucked up. And the same one, it's basically the same person that wrote The Stranger also wrote Safe, which I'm currently watching. You have no idea what's going on.
Do you know what? I tried to watch Safe, but I found it difficult to get into.
Oh dear, walked into that one. I'll tell you what I have been watching. I've been watching the Ballers, which is the Rock.
Yeah, The Rock.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying that. American football, I don't mind. So I've been watching that as well recently. So, yeah, catching up on my programs. I've actually joined a Netflix group on Facebook because I want to get recommendations, what to see. So, do you know what? If you're listening and you've seen something that you think I could watch, tweet in, please.
I've got a few things for you, Stu. I will find you. Mainly films, though, I think I'll recommend for you. And what film did I watch the other day that was bizarre? What was it? Oh, it was Lady Macbeth with Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh is a fine actress. I recommend her work. And that's come up. Why does Netflix come up on my screen? That's going to bug. Oh, so annoying. Anyway, enough of that. Let's move on because people have probably heard enough of us talking about those things. It's the end of the show. Thank you very much for listening to us. Love Sports Show, remember, is on Thursday nights now at 10 p.m. And what I've also realised I've done in cancelling my Netflix thingy, I've put the whole thing on mute, which means Stu's probably talking. I can't hear it. Sorry, Stu, I put you on mute. That was very rude of me. I'm not sure if you were saying anything.
No.
Fine. So good. Love Sport, 10 o'clock. Updates on Twitter at 9Wireless Podcast. And that is it, really. So thank you very much for joining me this week, Stu.
No problem at all.
Oh, the ladies are meant to be in action on Sunday in the Cup away at Crystal Palace at Bromley FC. It's down for a 7 p.m. kickoff. Last week's league game with Stevenage was postponed due to Storm Kira. I think that is finally everything. So, Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last, and we will speak to you again next Friday.
So pretty, be so dangerous. She's only 5 foot tall, but maybe 5'2" in her wrestling boots. And I hear she can even sing. She's the champ of everything. Why can't every girl be more like Alexa Bliss? How can a chick on TV make you feel like this? She's got a finishing move called Twisted Bliss, and it's like my heart. It's caught in a sleeper hole. Whoa, oh, oh. Why can't every girl be more like Alexa?